actually our first recording of 2026 and delighted to be here. Angela's in her car at the moment.
We've had such difficulty trying to get this recorded.
I know it was absolutely a nightmare, but we're here now. And before we move into the topic, I just want to open up the space by saying, you know, um, our conversation will be on attachment. And I just wanted to acknowledge Angela's new Instagram page. We will drop the details of that in the recording so people can grab it and see it. But what I really love about it is the intention behind Angela's page. It isn't just surface level mental health content. It's Angela bringing her voice as a psychotherapist into a space that so many people turn to for understanding. And her page is offering, for me, when I look at her page, it's an offering of deep education and awareness, particularly around important topics of grief and attachment, helping people see how their relational patterns are shaped and not flaws, but our adaptations, which we will talk about more. And this is exactly what today's conversation is on. It is on attachment. And I just feel that this is a beautiful extension of your work already, Angela. So I'm going to
Mhm.
beautifully pass it over to you and allow you to take us into your what you'd like to share on attachment. We'll open the floor up for you, darling.
Oh, thank you, honey. And thank you, as always, for being such a great champion of mine and for always holding me up. I really appreciate that because it means the world to me. And especially because I've only come into this line of work. You've been in it for such a long time. And, I've learned so much from you because, you're always great with your time and with your information and with your wisdom. And it just makes such a difference to me. And, I really appreciate everything you've given me not only as a beautiful friend, but as somebody that I really admire. And, I've learned a great deal from, and I just wanted to say that. So, when I look at attachment, because I want to say and be honest, we jumped on a call a few days ago and, Karen and I were chatting and I just had a good cry, I just sat there and I was like in my space where I just needed to cry. We couldn't actually record that night because technical issues. So it was really good because it was much needed. And I just sat there and I don't cry very often in front of many people. It's my husband or it's really Karen and that's it. I don't I find it very difficult to allow that side of myself because of my own attachment style, and what I had to deal with in my own childhood. But I was doing a lot of attachment work and I was doing a course on attachment outside of my psychotherapy because I really want to understand it more, but I also want to help other people understand it. But that doesn't mean that I'm not still doing the work, and I will have to do that work and continue to do that work probably for the rest of my life because of the attachment style I developed as a child. And as I sat there with Karen having a good cry, and I'm like, oh, it was really looking at that part of myself, and looking at that little girl, the little Angela, that developed so many different, I suppose, core wounds as a result of my childhood. And I won't go into too heavily into my own situation, but I will give it kind of an idea. I grew up in a
Yeah.
family of five. My parents are now both dead. My mother was an incredible mother, very loving, very kind, very giving with her time, but was also very stretched because I had two older siblings. One was a year older than me, and the other was three. And so you can imagine all that close age group. And my father, who, meant well, but wasn't emotionally available. So he came into my life with his own trauma, a very traumatic childhood in many ways that he brought into our family. And he would have been quite reactive as a result of that because of his own childhood. He had to leave school at 11. He had to go work farms. There's a lot to his story that, I don't have the permission to share. But as a result of that, I came into a home where my mother was very affectionate, very loving, but my father, like, I had to ask him when I was an adult, do you love me? And he said, that's really, Angela, of course I love you. Why would you even ask that? And I said, because it's interesting. You have never said that. You never said that. I'm in my 30s and you have never said to me, I love you. So I'm just pointing that out to you. It was actually at my sister's anniversary mass. We were standing outside and talking, and it just came up, and he said, "Of course I love you. I thought you would have known that." And I realized because people meet us where they're at and they have their own journey and their own story. And I realized how important it was for me to hear that, even though I knew on a deep level that he did in his own way. He just didn't know how to show it. So my lens through life would have been see me. I need to be seen a lot, and but also at times I wasn't enough because my validation in my family came through achievement. So I would come home if I won a medal with athletics, or if I won a reading competition, or if I performed something, I would get up and I would perform a play in front of my family. So I was a real performer. But there was a reason I was performing as well, is because I wasn't really getting met other than that. So I was forgotten about twice. So there was one time I remember I was on my kitchen table. I'm at home on my own, but I'm really probably about 8 years old. So I've been left at home alone. And back then, that would have been kind of normal in one way. I grew up in an estate, so there was a lot of people around and people would come and go. But I remember being on my own at this time. And I remember me standing on my kitchen table because anywhere I could find a stage, I was on it. And I'm standing
Mm.
there and I'm performing to nobody, to myself. And next minute I fall and I bang my head. And I don't remember much after that, but I woke up. So I could vaguely remember some aspects, which tells me I was concussed, but I didn't know the language for it at the time. But there was no one around while I was concussed. There was no one there while I'm lying on the floor going, oh, I have a lump on my head. And I vaguely remember being on the table, but I don't remember a whole lot after it. And then eventually came home and I told everybody I got hurt. And then there was another incident where I remember at nighttime I woke up and I was very attached to my mother, overly attached. So wherever she would go, I would have to follow. People would joke because there'd be 4 feet underneath my mother's coat and two were mine. And I was attached to her hip, literally. And that was because I didn't know sometimes because she might be gone out. And, there was a lot of reasons for that. But this night I woke up and I went downstairs and I said, where's Mammy? And my father said to me, not realizing, telling me this, what that would do. And my other siblings are in bed asleep. And he said, she's gone up the town. So thinking that was it. So I heard my mother is gone. I need to go find her. So I'm a little girl. Definitely not over 10. And I put my shoes on and I sneak out of the house and it's pitch dark outside. And, it must have been very late when I look back because there was no shops open. There was no one really around. And I went down by the river. I went to all these usual places that my mother might have been, which when I look back now would have been absolutely terrifying. But I wasn't scared. I was more scared of being away from my mother than the possibility of walking down by a dark river on my own at nighttime. And I remember as I'm coming back up to where I live, and there's three men, and they're standing over a car, and the bonnet is pulled up. I just remember that visual because I remember thinking, strangers, danger, even back then. And they say, because I can remember it now, they said, little girl, what are you doing out on your own? And I'm looking at them, terrified, and I just run and I keep running to get home. Now, when I look back, I can see they are three grown men wondering why a little child, like I was so small, even in height back then, um, wondering why I'm walking the streets on my own at that hour of night. You might see it more now, but back then you didn't see that. So they were concerned, but of course I was terrified and I ran home, but nobody had noticed I'd even left. And my mother was there all the time. She was just out in the back garden, putting clothes up on the line. And, that's what she would do sometimes late at night, but I didn't know that. So what that taught me was my attachments. I was very anxiously attached. So I then, as a result of that, carried that through different areas of my life. It played out in different dynamics, more so in friendships, more so in relationships as opposed to friendships. In friendships, I had a very solid sense of myself because I had a lovely group of friends as I was growing up.
Mm.
And my siblings were very good to me. But in relationships, because I saw what way relationships worked and the dynamic in my household, it didn't show me what way a relationship should work. So I had to really learn that, and I had to go back in and really heal a lot of myself. And really, by the time I'd met Stephen, I had done a great deal of work because I had no choice but to, because that part of me, and I'm still doing the work. But what I learned was me doing this work wasn't going to work by me just saying it to myself. I learned that I had to really feel it. I had to see it to believe it. So I had to visualize it. It had to be done through visualization, but also feeling, because memory and healing that subconscious, going back in and telling that little girl that she was okay, that she was enough, even if she was forgotten. She's not forgotten now. And,
Mm,
really healing that, but also showing evidence of how that showed up in my life. So when I would say, okay, I wasn't enough, or I felt abandoned, or I felt forgotten, then I would have to see and visualize all the other areas where I wasn't abandoned, where people did show up for me. And, showing the evidence of that so my brain could rewire itself. So that's what I had to do. And that has made a massive difference in my life. But so that's what I wanted to really do, because I don't think people understand so much. The amount of people that have said to me over the years, I don't know where that's coming from. And Karen, you know this because you know this so well. And you would have said to me, well, where's that feeling coming from? You would have said this too, because that's not coming from now. That's coming from
mm,
your past. You were
mhm,
saying this to me well before I was even looking at the deep work around attachments. So that's what I have learned. But I still have to work on that because it has driven my life in many ways. And Stephen, then when we came in together, so we're 18 years together, and his attachment style and my attachment style had to meet and help regulate each other and really meet each
mhm,
other in the middle, and then form that secure attachment together. And that came with love and patience and understanding, and no games, no, not trying to play games, and being honest and having those difficult conversations of, what I would have come in with more so. And that's what I've learned. So I've learned that, part of me to heal it, and to work on it continuously and to do the meditations, to do the journaling. And that's where I have found it the most effective, is actually doing the visualization. And now I'm listening to meditations every night. I'm listening to that all the time, where I'm listening to that, going back, tapping into the subconscious, reconnecting with that little Angela. Because while most of the time it does not show up, the odd time it does in life, and it can come up in many areas, where I might feel imposter syndrome within myself and go, oh my God, like you saw how long it took me to actually go, I'm going to post these videos. I'm going to do it. I sent
mm,
it to you first. So it's that part of me where, my conditioning and stuff, where I have to step into myself. So I want to be very honest and very real that, if you're not on the journey yourself and being a work in progress, then I don't know if you can fully understand what other people might be going on themselves.
mm,
And that's where I'm at with it, is just, um, I am fascinated by it. I'm fascinated because I spent so much of my life not realizing that it was actually dictating my life before I had to really go, what is wrong with me? It doesn't make sense that this is happening. Why is this happening? It doesn't add up to what's happening right now. And then having to go back in and really do the work and visit it. And like I can say that, in my relationships, because of the love of Stephen and because of the stability there, I have healed that aspect of myself when it comes to that.
mhm.
But I have other aspects that I realize, I'm not in full control of. And that's where I have to keep going back in. Like in work situations, I'd be very quick to say, yes, 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 or different stuff. Have to go back in and go, okay, what do I really want here? What is it that I want? And what am I saying yes to? Or is it the 5-year-old Angela that's actually saying yes here? Or is it really, so that's the work in progress. So that's why on my page, I want to explore that. But I love that we have this opportunity now to have that full conversation around it, and to give people not just my angle but also yours, and just kind of to give people a feeling for where my childhood shaped mine, and but how you can actually rewire your brain and rewrite your story, that you are not a prisoner to it, and it doesn't have to hold you or hold you back for the rest of your life. And that's what I realized. But not everyone knows that they're being held back by the story of their childhood, and that's why I wanted to really put that into my page. And kind of, I don't know, I think it's because it's the part I'm most passionate about, and obviously bereavement, and I think we go there
Yeah.
because of where we've been, and because of what we've had to go through and how we can carry ourselves through it, and that I really want to help other people carry theirs through it as well. So yeah, so that's where I am, and that's why I chose, I suppose, to talk about attachments when I initially decided to start my own psychotherapy page, just to kind of focus on the area that I suppose that kind of connects with me the most.
Yeah. Like and you're right when you say it, when like attachment itself is it's such a massive landscape, and there's so much in the whole topic of attachment. Like it's massive, and you've really spoken to so much important components of it in your personal share. So in your personal share, the things I've heard. So I'll just grab the wonderment of what you said and I'll just put not label and language on it, but I'll put structural language on it so we can see it again through what you said, but see it again because it's brilliant what you said. And it's, and I would advise people to, you know, when you've heard and you've shared in listening in our discussion, go back again and listen again to what Angela has said because she's given us massive generosity in her personal her personal share of attachment. Attachment is so, it shapes everything. Like it really shapes everything. And, we're all born into this environment, our first environment. You're born into a family system. And in that family system, everybody's interpersonal relationship and everybody's way of interacting with each other and the relationships that form in there are very different for everybody. So, like you, similarly, I'm a family, there's five of us, five children, and then mum and dad. And how my mother related to me was very different to how she related to my siblings. Um, and it wasn't because of anything other than each one of us have a different temperament and a different personality because everybody experiences their upbringing very, very differently because of their meaning making, because of their temperament. So attachment really is, attachment is how it's formulated in how our early caregiving and our parents, the experiences, it shapes our nervous system. So it's not a personality. Attachment isn't about our personality. It is a survival strategy based on what we encountered in these environments. So we're not speaking, and it's true, we're not speaking to things that go on in the family with blame. We're just speaking at it with awareness and education. So, if a parent is being a parent and they've never done, the inner looking, because think of it, parents back in our time, there wasn't such thing as therapy. There wasn't the arenas for places to go and look at yourself. We had confession. We had a Catholic culture, as your inheritance, and people were made to go to mass, and then you were terrified of the priest, some people were, and you had to give confession. So that was the only, when you think of the outlet for sharing, that was the only place we had. So, attachment is your survival strategy. And the reason why it really shows up, and it always shows up very strong when you're in, for people, when you're in romantic relationships, because you're taking how you relate and what you learn. So your family is going to be the first place that mirrors back to you your self image. So we learn about a sense of self in that family dynamic. And if we have had parents who have had unhealed, unresolved trauma in them, and they're coming into this space and they're anxious, or they have a lot of aggression in them, then think of the feedback that we receive back under that energy. Okay. And as children, we're so innocent and we're so sensitive that the first thing we'll always do is take it into ourselves and think it's actually information about ourselves. So my parent is angry, it must be my fault. So in terms of like what we're talking about then is there is styles of attachment. There is the secure attachment. And you spoke about that with Stephen when you got together, that you were able to co-regulate each other. So when partners fight, they're they're not fighting at each other. It's actually their nervous systems are is what's showing up into the relationship in that moment. And the nervous systems are being under attack. In other words, both couples will end up being triggered and defensive and reactive. So it's their nervous system energy that's in the way, not the grounded, rational adult. So if you have a secure, if you are secure in your attachment with yourself and you're in a relationship and your partner is securely attached, then absolutely you will co-regulate each other and you will repair the conflict very, very easily. And in a very, there's no panic, there's no need for distance. You're able to communicate your needs. You're able to speak about what's going on for you and you co-regulate each other. If there's an anxious attachment, unfortunately, the person who's got anxious, preoccupied attachment, they're reading everything. They're hyper aware, they're hyper vigilant, they're very aware of the mood of the other and the relational shifts that go on because they have a fear of abandonment. So they're constantly overthinking. We see this at times with people at the beginning of new romantic relationships where they overread text tones and changes in the tones and changes in the text. They didn't get back to me. Why didn't they get back to me? What's wrong? They just have this need for reassurance. Like that's what they need. Like they really have this need for reassurance. They may come off as a bit clingy or emotionally intense. They don't mean to be. It's just their nervous system needs reassurance. So again, we're speaking to the nervous system. This is not the personality of the person. It's that need to feel secure in the attachment. So some people will use words like, oh, they're very needy. They're not needy. They're sincerely not able to regulate the anxiety in themselves. So they need to know that they need that reassurance. We have the energy of what's called the avoidant attachment. And these people, they value too much their own independence. They're too strong. God bless them. But they pull away during conflict. They're not able. Everything will feel like an overwhelm if they get too close in that space of intimacy because they over intellectualize feelings. So they don't know how to be down in the body and how to feel safe around emotions and conflicts. So they will bolt. They're the bolters. So think of, if we're talking about nervous system, we're talking about your fight, flight, freeze response. They're the flight. They're going to run. They're going to get out of here. They'll always create distance. For a person in the relationship, they will feel that the person is cold. But the poor person who has this avoidant attachment, they genuinely are doing this for protection because they're terrified of feeling engulfed by the other person or by being hurt or let down or disappointed again because they have had to feel disappointment in a big way. So all of our attachment styles, they're really, as you said and you named it, they come into existence because of a wound. And because of a wound in us, and we have a story then about ourselves, because remember I said we take it in and we make it about us. So we tell ourselves a story. My story was, I don't matter. So, like, not like you, but similar to what you shared, I would have been that clingy energy. And if you have an anxious and you're an anxious attachment person, you always will attract the distance energy. And we spoke about this the other day, where you'll have the pursuer, the one who'll want connection and conversation, and because they need to feel reassured and regulated, and you'll have the one that's the avoider. So that is hard work for these two nervous systems to coexist together because the need of one is the opposite way for the need of the other. So it's impossible. It's not that it's impossible for them to be together because they're not being together. They're functioning out of their nervous system. So it's very hard work in that relationship for people. And then what do people do then? They go into that place of total rejection energy of, okay, I'm going to end this. You know, that's not the medicine. The medicine, and you said it, you named it, is about self-awareness, starting to really understand about your attachment style, learning how to self-regulate yourself primarily, not making the partner in your relationship the person to regulate you. However, if the partner in your relationship is a secure attachment style of a person who is regulated, they'll have a lot of emotional capacity to not be triggered by your wound and not be triggered by your attachment style and love it with compassion and have enough availability to absolutely sit into that space and hold that space for you. There are some of the styles of it. And then we have the fear avoidant, which is the kind of disorganized attachment person. They crave intimacy, but they're terrified of it. So they really are hot and cold. You hear people saying, oh, they ghosted me and then they reached out to me. They're just hot and cold. But that's really rooted in a trauma energy, that type of disorganized attachment. That is because they just feel so unsafe and they have a deep, deep, deep desire in them to feel safe, but they don't know. It's a little bit metaphorically like a dog that was abused its whole life. It doesn't know if the hand coming in is going to hit it or pet it. That person with the disorganized energy in them does not know if the energy of the other is going to be a loving one or an unloving one. So this person, unfortunately, is drawn to chaos a lot in their life because they have no boundary. They don't know how to contain themselves. And that's where the trauma energy gets played out in there. So I love, and I love knowing that, couples, they're not fighting each other. They are fighting their nervous system. That's what's really taking place in there. And I remembered, you know, just as a personal share to kind of ground the delicacy of this, because as you said, it's so big, Angela, and I love that you're going to gift a platform to people to learn this through your platform because it's so big. And it's why I did the research in self-love, because I recognized through my own trauma that because I couldn't like Karen, I couldn't relate to her and I couldn't have a relationship with her. And then I was putting all of that relationship need onto everyone else to make me feel good enough and to make me feel loved. And I took time where I took 4 years in complete silence and no relationship. I took that time to really, really figure out who is she? Who is she? Like, who am I? And I built up having a relationship with me. So you could say, in terminology terms of attachment, I created and I worked with having this secure attachment with Karen because I said to myself, yes, I'm in a relationship with everything, but ultimately, the worst relationship I have is the one with myself. And if I can't love me, then I'm always going to have an attachment style energy that will always create conflict in my life. So that's why self love for me became the most important lens in which I had to learn and heal my attachment with. When I had finished my psychotherapy training, I did a year with Dr. Una McCluskey, and it wasn't academic. It was group experiential, and it was called The Dynamics of Attachment Theory in Adulthood. So we have a bunch of adults. There was 14 of us in a group, and my core wound was, do I matter? So going into a big space with group work and doing group work, and it's all around attachment, my sense of do I matter would always occupy come into the space, and I would then unconsciously perform is I would do everything to seek out the wisdom or the reassurance of knowing I'd matter. So I'd people please, as an example. Okay, I would be do whatever you wanted, people pleased. But I remember I would leave the course, and for it was on once a month, and for three consecutive months, every time I left and driving back to Waterford from Cork, I would just hear this words constantly. You are too much in the room. And I kept sitting with that and I was like, that's not my words. Am I actually feeling the group's energy here? So in the end, I brought it into the group and I was too much because I unconsciously performed. I was needy, as I described. Of course, I'm needy because I needed to know I mattered. But I remember saying it to Dr. Una McCluskey. I keep hearing when I leave here, and I named it, I keep hearing and feeling that I may be too much for this group. And I wasn't expecting anything else other than for her to give me an explanation for what I said. But what does she do? She said, okay, you're going to check it out with everybody in the group. You're going to ask each person individually. Now, I went into a place of terror. You know that feeling where your body gets so ice cold and the blood literally drains out your body and you want to vomit? My nervous system was like, don't do this to me. And she said, and she was brilliant. She grounded everyone. She said, Karen has gone into fear, which means you're all going to pick up on the fear. So breathe into your body, soften your belly because that's where fear always hits us is in the belly. She said, uncross your legs, uncross your arms. Let's all take a deep breath. Karen, you're going to ask me first, and this is how you're going to do it. You're going to say, Una, sometimes I feel that I am too much. Am I too much for you? Beautiful, clear, grounded, boundaried. I'm owning it. It's coming from me, and this is mine. So I spoke it as she said to do it. And she looked at me and she said, "No, I don't experience you as too much." And as we moved around the room, the circle, I knew exactly the four people who were going to say I was too much. I knew it, Angela. I knew it in my body before I got to them. And as we got to them, they honored it because she said, "You have to speak the truth." She said, "We have to honor truth." And they honored it and they said, "Yes, I experience you as too much." Extraordinary. And at the end of it, then she grounded it by saying to the people, those of you who did experience Karen and beautifully that you honored it, just understand that this is more about your inner process than it is actually about Karen. Karen is mirroring something to you for you to explore inside of yourself. I drove home feeling totally liberated. It was the first time ever in a space where I brought a part of me that I was terrified to ever allow, the exile part of me, my intuition, that I was ever allowed to bring it into a space. It was well held. And those who told me the truth, it actually liberated me because I had known it would be them. So when they said, yeah, it freed me. It absolutely freed me. I drove home feeling so cleansed, so liberated in my emotion. I didn't carry their emotions. And a month passed and I came back, and those four people, bless them, they said they were in suicidal energy because they felt so guilty. They thought they would have hurt me by telling the truth. And I looked at them, I was like, no, ye freed me. I felt amazing. And then that made me realize how, because of our insecure attachment energies, we're all terrified to trust in the energy and the wisdom of just showing up as we truly are and really being who we need to be and just be with each other as we truly are. We all show up in terror and fear of being who we truly are in case who we are is too much, who we are is unlovable because our core wound is hijacking us. So we show up in the energy of either if it's the avoidant, the anxious, the insecure, we show up through those attachment styles. And if we do show up in those insecure attachment styles as the truth of what they are, then the medicine kicks in. Then we get from it exactly what will help us to regulate ourselves. Because we discover then in those moments, like I did, that it's okay if I was too much because it actually wasn't personal to me. It was just about where they were with themselves in their own process. But that I still survived it. I still survived. I was still here. And I remember just being so taken aback by that. So it really showed me how all of us, no matter who we are, we all have something, a little inner wound, whether it's a little or a big one, but it does tell us a story about who we are. And because of that, it informs our self image, whether that's a distorted one. And then that shapes, as we said, like attachments is not a personality, it's a survival strategy. So it shapes our survival
Mm.
strategy. You know, so
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
a big topic here, you know,
It's a
that you
huge
brought
topic.
in. Yeah.
And like I love all your insights there, and it's so true because a lot of the time when you and it, as you explain it, the nervous system, which would make a lot of sense for people, and even when I look back at my own situation and my own story, like a lot of the time you're just getting by, you're doing good, your life is moving smoothly, and everything is going good, you're happy, everything is great, and then a trigger comes in, and your nervous system is activated, and you're brought right back to that old core wound. And that's why I think people are completely thrown sometimes. And I'm wondering when you say, like, if we just show up as ourselves, because I have had to do that. I've had to do that deep inner work because, Karen, I couldn't do this job if I hadn't have done that. I've had to sit in that space and in therapy, but also, as you know, we've sat in that space in meditation, in spaces together. And, I've had to because of, all the traumas. So when like, my attachment style would have been completely skewed. The sudden death of my mother, the short, the battle my father faced with cancer, a short battle. So, he literally was given a diagnosis and within 3 months was gone. And, my sister's, murder and, all of those things. So like they would have like really knocked my sense of self in the world again and bringing it right back. But
Yeah.
So each time, you're moving one step forward and you're being knocked about 10 steps back. So you have to kind of really go back in and do the work. But I think if you have the tools and you have the kind of know-how, it does make a difference, because it's like, your brain can also remember how to get out of this a lot faster the more you do it and the more work you do on yourself. I mean, it takes a lot now to shake me. Unless I'm going through a hormonal surge as I was last week, with the two of us. And I don't mind saying that. It can bring up a lot when you're looking back at that, that little girl, and kind of thinking, oh my God, that was hard. And to appreciate that. And sometimes it's okay to mourn that part of yourself and to kind of go back and give yourself a metaphorical hug, or
Yeah.
that side of things. But I think it is a work, and you do have to do it. And I think the more you do it, the less the triggers bring you back. But you can still be triggered. But what I have found is, even with the triggers, they don't last as long. So you bounce back a lot quicker. So the nervous system regulates a lot faster, is what I've noticed. It's not as, whereas before, if my nervous system was activated, say particularly years ago, I remember it could take me 2 or 3 days to really regulate that system again and to bring it back into balance. Whereas now, yeah, I can still get triggered. I think everybody gets triggered. I mean, I'd love to meet somebody that does not get triggered, and please tell me how. But
Don't
I'd
know.
love that. But I do. I still get a jolt if certain things jolt me. I mean, especially if I'm changed. Like, I get a lot of different work situations where they might say, okay, we're going to put you into this new situation now because we think you'd be really good at. And then all of a sudden, like, my system gets activated, my nervous system, and I'm sitting there going, oh, and I have to really balance it and regulate and go, no, this is a good thing. Just because, you're being
Yeah.
changed into a different environment, this is a good thing for you. So I have to really tell myself that, because, my life, as a child would have been quite chaotic at times. So I like calm. So anything that's changed sometimes can feel like chaos, even when it's not. So I have to tell my nervous system, no, this is good, this is normal. So it is something I can reactivate very quickly now. And even though if I get triggered, it doesn't take me long to balance and
Yeah.
regulate. And that's because of the tools and techniques. When you talked about, we could, for us to just show up, and to love that part and accept that part of ourselves, how can people do that? How can they just, show up into that space and know the difference, know which parts? Because I think for years I didn't know which part of myself was showing up. I didn't know, is
Yeah.
this the people pleaser? Is this the person that I want people to see? Or is this really me? And
Yeah.
I had to do for years of that work where, I wanted other people's validation. It now, oh, it's just such peace in knowing that I don't need it. It's lovely if it comes and people want to,
Mhm.
people are very kind and respectful or whatever, but it's more so, I don't need it anymore. I am at peace with myself and where I am in my life, thank goodness. But there was a time when it meant so much to me, and not to discredit other people, but I don't need it anymore. It still means, and I value it, don't get me wrong, but I don't need it. So, and that was the part of me that was showing up. It was a part of me that wasn't truly myself. It was that part that, as you talked about earlier, see me, I want to be acknowledged. I want to matter. So, I think all the losses, being on my knees literally and having to crawl back to reality and to get myself out of the depths of despair, it kind of regulated me in a different way. It kind of showed me what really mattered. And when it came down to what really mattered, happened to be my little family and where I
Mhm.
was in that state. And that kind of freed me a lot from the constraints that I'd held, I suppose. But I know there's people listening now, and I know people have said, how do you find that part of yourself? What is truly you, and how do you know which part of you is not your attachment running the show, and the real
Yeah.
you that wants to be seen?
Yeah. Which is a big question, but an important question. Like the honest truth and the honest answer I have for that is, you know, if you are reactive and you are feeling a massive reaction happening in you in the interaction, then I'm telling you wholeheartedly that's your nervous system being triggered. Okay. So, because when you have come into this and you spoke about it, you spoke about actually practical tools that you spoke about you and things to notice the triggers you said, to really like learn ways of self-soothing, yourself. So for somebody who is beginning this, because also the reason why it's such a big question, it's not an easy journey. And I mean that because when you begin this work and you hear the language out there like spiritual awakening, what spiritual awakening actually really means, it is you wake up out of the spell of being the way you've been and behaving in this world and the way you've behaved that has only ever been through your survival mechanism. So it is a death of an identity when we wake up. And that's why it's painful. That's why it's hard work and it commands a lot out of us. But the reward in it is that we don't leak it back into the relationship. We don't leak it onto our children. We don't leak it into the home. We are not as stressed, as burnt out, as worn down. We're not caught up in knots and attached to the melodrama of life, which is a fantastic place to be in. So I would say come back to, are you getting reactive? Are you having a massive reaction in this moment? Is what that person's saying and doing making you go into a reaction? Then I would say to you, which takes work, don't react back. The boomerang effect, as I would say, is what you put out comes back. Don't fight fire with fire. You need to put fire out with water. So if you are starting to feel reactive, it's a beautiful signpost pointing at your nervous system is starting to fire up. Allow yourself permission to say, I can't answer this right now. I need to step out. Okay. In a marriage or in a coupling, that can be so intense because a lot of the times, a lot of people have become, we'll say, not, I want to find the right word because it's not that they have become accustomed to the other's way because they suffer from the triggering of the other and then them getting triggered and then they're in this conflict back and forth, uh vent text or vent verbal energy that's just an attack of each other and it hurts each other, so you never get used to that. But if you want to break the pattern of that, we'll call it a pattern. Okay, if you want to break the pattern of that, if one person becomes aware in the relationship, if the person right now listening to us talking about this, if you are the one who wants to change and end the pattern, it just takes one person to respond differently. That's all it takes. It just takes you to show up and not respond in the way that you've always responded, which is out of your attachment style or your survival, your defense mechanism. It's about recognizing, okay, wow, I do get very reactive in here. And hurt people will hurt people. And that's why the pattern stays going. It's tit for tat. You did this, so I'm going to do this. Well, you did that to me the last time. You said this the last time. You have to end that cycle. Otherwise, you're going to stay on the hamster wheel. If one of you gets off, then it's given permission for the other to change in the outcome as well. And I know this because I've done a lot of couple therapy work with couples where I would let them tell me their blame game in the room. I would say to both of them, okay, tell me the blame. Blame each other. I want to see what you're like in that space with each other.
Mhm.
And they're not even connecting. They're bypassing each other. They're just firing energy at each other. Like fucking, it's like each other is putting the bullet in the gun for the other to shoot the other with. They're
Yeah.
loading each other up for the attack. And I see it.
Yeah.
So I always say it actually only takes one of ye to not respond in the way you've always done it. Look at the cost. Like, look at the cost of what it's cost you and the relationship by being in it the way you've been. I'm sure it's
Yeah.
cost you stress, emotional pain, hate at times, vengeance, all of that. So imagine what it would be like if you responded differently. So know the behavioral points that make you get triggered. So for some it might be when my partner pulls away, I tend to go after them. Stay here, we need to sort this out. So one might chase down the argument and the other wants to run from it. When what does conflict make you feel like? It might make you feel so uncomfortable that you think by shouting into the space is the only way to clear it. I'm telling you now, if you feel a reaction building in your body, that is your nervous system out of regulation. So the best medicine, and I would invite somebody to try it. Just try it. Just say to the other, I can't right now, and get out of the space. This method absolutely won't work in a relationship if it's a trauma-based one, if it's a toxic relationship, and if it's
Abusive.
abusive in any way. This is only, we'll say, in spaces whereby, each one of you know each other so well, and you're understanding that there's the push and pull energy happening, and you just want to change that. Just get out of the space, sit with yourself, ask yourself, what is my need right now? So maybe it's I'm my need is to be heard, to be listened to be seen, to be reassured. So you come back and you say, I'm feeling this way because I need to be reassured. I'm feeling angry because I feel I'm not being heard. You own it as your own, and you frame it in a way that's not blaming and pointing the finger at the other person. You're reframing it so that you're inviting the other person to understand you in your world. And once you start with that, what happens then is your reactivity, your body will start to recognize that you're not doing the same pattern like you used to. You're now doing it differently, and your body starts to feel less under threat. So then the reactivity energy doesn't kick in as much. And you feel more emotionally spacious in yourself to handle the interaction with the other. That would probably be my easiest way of trying to dilute it all out of the intensity to give something practical into the space. But you've been doing that in how you've been speaking about it, which people will get for themselves by listening to you. They'll be listening to you going, I recognize that about me. I recognize that
Yeah.
about me. And I just wanted to support what you shared by just putting the objectivity angle onto it. So they can hear it and go, I get that about me. And then they're like, ah, so that's what that is.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
because it's so big, Angela. Like
It's so big.
it's like trying to see the wood from the trees.
That's it, because if your brain is, I sometimes think, I used to get this feeling, where um I'd look around me and sometimes it's like when you talk about the wood from the trees, it's just so interesting because I used to get that feeling like, years ago where it would be like I was in a box, and trying to see outside of that box was really difficult. It was like my world view in lots of ways was very closed in. And, in a
Yeah.
box, this is before I had kids and before everything else, before I met Stephen, like, I really felt that. It felt very closed, even though I could see physically that the world was quite big, but it just how my thought process was, it was very closed in and very rigid in its way that I wasn't willing to look outside of that and until I had to, and it was really good because then I freed myself in so many ways and I made a lot of big decisions in my life that needed to be made that made a massive difference. But as a result of those decisions, as you say, that spiritual awakening came, and as a result of that, then I had to go, holy God, I had to do the deep dive, do the work, and meet that part of myself. And it's not easy. And I think that's the part, like when you're sitting there, as they talk about the dark night of the soul and that shadow self that comes up,
Mhm.
everything that you have to meet. I mean, I was trying to run from that because I didn't want to have to meet it, but I did meet it. And because you can only run for so long, eventually it will catch up with you. And you have to
Yeah.
kind of face that part of yourself. But I will say to people that might be listening now and, that they might be having that experience going, oh, I'm recognizing myself here. I've recognized that part of myself. And especially as you talked about the relationships and the two nervous systems together, so many people I'm sure can relate to that. And I want people to know that, there's so much you can do, even,
Yeah.
just really, recognizing it, as Karen was saying, in itself, when you can kind of become aware of it, even
Yeah.
that in itself, awareness is where we can actually heal that part. And it does
Yeah.
make a difference and it is worth it because when you go in and do that work, it does have a knock-on effect in a positive way in the rest of your life. As you say, it's not leaking into your family, it's not leaking into your relationships, it's not being passed on. Do you know what I mean? And that's the
Mhm.
thing. like I'm so glad that I met a huge part of that in myself before I had kids, because like if I was still carrying the same wound with my kids, then I wouldn't have maybe been as affectionate. I may not have hugged as much because, I would have been kind of carrying that side that, my poor mother was so stretched sometimes, and she was very loving, but may not have had the chance to always give me a hug because she was run ragged. And my father literally didn't know how. He would recoil. Like even at the thoughts, he would physically stiffen if there was a hug, and that was his way. But I knew I had to reprogram that side of myself. And now I have people all the time say, it's really interesting. Hey, Angela, I know you don't like hugs, but I'm still going to hug you. And I'm still giving that energy to the world in that regard. That, like, I literally had a colleague go, one of the days, he's so lovely, and he just said, I really just want to give you a hug. And he goes, I'm just going to do it anyway because I know you don't like him, but I hope you don't mind. And I let him hug me, and I'm like, I don't mind. And I even have my lovely, family members, people say to me, I know you don't like hugs, but I'm going to give you a hug. And I have obviously given that energy to the world based on my own
Mhm.
program that I have carried in a way. But I hug Stephen and the kids all the time. Like I'm literally wrapped in their arms all the time. So I do break
Yeah,
that part of my program with my family, my own little family. And I do with you too. Like we
yeah,
hug, and I always feel like it's
yeah,
not forced and it's not awkward. But I realized the amount of people, and as someone said to me recently, I see how you dodge, you get under the arms, you move out of the way, to avoid the hug. And it's like the minute you see people hugging, you stiffen. And I realize, so I am still a work in progress there. I still
yeah.
have to heal that
That's
part of
okay.
myself and to be okay with people hugging me. So yeah, so that's what I'm
Yeah,
talking about. You can, I didn't bring it into my family. I made sure my kids always felt loved and hugged, but it doesn't mean that I have healed it completely in the outside world where I still have to work on that part of myself. So I'm saying to people, I suppose, that are listening, there's a chance for us all. I've
yeah.
healed so
You're
much of
saying
myself.
attachment styles can
Yes,
change.
they
And
can
you're
change.
naming it. Yeah, you're saying
Yeah,
it can
and
change through secure relationships. It
yes,
can change through, you named it, self-awareness. You said through nervous system regulation, because you spoke about the ways in which you have changed
yeah,
yours through corrective emotional experiences, and absolutely through therapy.
and
And
true
guys,
therapy.
by going and reading Angela's pages and learning. No,
Thank
Angela,
Karen.
darling, you've been so
Uh,
generous in like really, and guys, I mean the bravery, and I want to honor that, like, but the bravery for all any of us, but for tonight it's been Angela, when we share ourselves so personally and we invite somebody in to understand our us inside of ourselves. I mean, that is very, like, that is courageous and it's brave. So I just wanted to frame that there, because it may sound like it's a very easy conversation for us because we feel so safe. And that's an example of a safe, secure attachment style being played out right now with me and Angela. We do feel very safe, that we do forget others will be listening in it when we get into our little bubble. It feels like a little bubble of security. So it may sound like the conversation just flows with easy breezy energy, and it is in this moment because of the safety and security of the attachment, which we would love everyone to have in their lives, because look at the flow that comes into your life. But I want to honor that it takes courage to allow others to know that deeper, more. It's like giving somebody your personal diary and say, go read it.
yeah.
So I just want to thank you for doing that. And then I would love you to close us out. Uh,
Yes, well, thank you, honey. And you're right. I mean, the beauty of our space is that we can share. And I suppose, I want listeners to hear it. And I think that's the part if we're going to, we need to open up our hearts more and to be vulnerable in that space as well, so that other people, vulnerability brings strength. And I want others to have that kind of particular aspect of it too. And I suppose, and to have relationships, even if you've come into them, where you can form a lovely secure bond and have
mm,
that kind of beautiful attachment, because we all deserve that beautiful attachment. And as you say, it can take one person to really create that and really, love you into it and help you, in that safe space. So I do wish that for everybody. And I suppose, you and I we're quite blessed with our partners that really do honor that space with us as well. So, and us with them too. It's a mutual love and respect. But I want to thank the listeners tonight. Me and Karen, we absolutely love. We've been so busy, the two of us, trying to jump on this, but this is our go-to. This is our space where I know the two of us have talked about this, how we just absolutely love it. We will be coming live soon to ye from a beautiful hotel. We are going to have a girls' night away soon, where we are going to have some champers and we are going to get into our glad rags and have a girls' night and really enjoy. And we're going to go live as well across our platforms for that night as well, because we want to invite you into that space as well. So please keep an eye on our social medias for that reason. But for now, for tonight, thank you, Karen, for always holding me in the best space and for just being the most incredible friend, my beautiful soul sister.
Love
I just
you.
love you. And I just thank you to the listeners for listening to us tonight, having this conversation. And I really hope you get something from it. And I hope you learn, as I have done, and I know Karen has done as well, that when you go in and you learn about your style and when you learn more about your own core wounds, how you can kind of heal that, go back and make peace with the past so you can, love your present. And that's what I want for the listeners. So thank you so much. And thank you from us, Pink is Power, for myself and Karen, wishing you a beautiful, beautiful day.
Bye for now, guys. Bye.